Hello, folks. It's Mark Murphy with TravelTube.com, and I've got a fun day in store for you. I'm going to cover a lot of topics. And before I do that, please do me a favor. Follow us on social media, TravelTube.com. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. The beauty of this long form podcast is when I do interview folks, because this is the channel for travel experts. We call it the Travel Expert Channel. And I'll have some guests coming up in the next few weeks. So stay tuned. But today you're just getting yours truly. And I hope you can live with that, because some of the things I'm going to talk about today are pretty funny. And I'll start off with just like a little summary of what I'm going to cover. So first of all, I need everyone to grab your ass with both hands. Oh, hold on. No, don't do that. We're going to talk about airline seating. And I want to know where you're going to weigh in on some of those changes. Figure out where I'm going, folks. Also, there's a new airline that's offering pet-friendly travel options. And do you have a pet peeve? Is there anything that you can't stand when it comes to flying? I've got a couple, and not just one. I've got multiple, but I'll share a couple of those. And then I'm going to wrap with the idea that there are some people in this industry that cannot see the forest for the trees. And I'm going to talk about a message I got from a travel agent a couple of weeks ago that, well, you'll see it. All right. You'll see it. But speaking of airlines, could airline travel get any worse? I mean, do you like flying? Do you know anybody that's like, yeah, I love getting on planes and flying places? I personally don't. And I've flown millions of miles, and it's a means to an end. There's nothing enjoyable about it. If you have to fly some type of distance, it's a hell of a lot nicer to be in business class or first class. But other than that, some of the antics that are going around and the behavior from brawls at gates. I mean, it seems like every other week there's a video coming out in Fort Lauderdale and other airports around the world where people just are losing their you-know-what at the gate. And then they end up getting arrested. They get put on no-fly lists. These people aren't very bright. And there are times when you feel like you're flying with a bunch of zoo animals in a beer can. That's how I would describe it. And my question is, would you rather fly with dogs or people? Personally, I choose dogs. I love dogs. I would much rather fly with dogs than I would ever want to fly with people. And if you haven't heard about this company, it's called Retrieve Air. And it's kind of cool because check it out. Yeah. Make a little adjustment there. There you go. So Retrieve Air, they allow you to fly with your dogs on limited dates, unfortunately, limited cities. But if you're in one of their markets, and you should look them up, it's called Retrieve Air, just like it's spelled there without the E at the end of Retrieve Air. Does that mean they're going to discriminate against any dog that's not a retriever? I've got a Labrador, so I know I'm okay. And that boy, he likes to retrieve everything around. And if you've been on my TravelTube TikTok or some of my other posts, you've seen Ben the Labrador, and he is my best friend here in Fort Lauderdale. And I would love to go everywhere with him. And it's one of the reasons I bought one of those camper vans, because instead of trying to stick him in a crate and flying him in cargo, which I refuse to do as a dog owner, some people are okay with it, but I refuse to do it because I don't want to stress my boy out. So you hear the occasional dog that dies in flight, et cetera. I would never forgive myself. And at the same time, this country, the USA, has so many great places to visit that on my trek out to the Midwest, well, really more the West, we're going out to the Boulder, Colorado area in early summer and spending a few weeks out there, taking our boy hiking and doing a bunch of things. I put him in the van and we cruise everywhere we go. And here's a little tip. There's a product called Necto, Necto. And it's a GPS, not GPS, a cell connected. I think it's a 5G connection that will monitor the temperature wherever you put it. And so obviously the camper van has air conditioning and Mine runs on lithium batteries. It can run for a couple of days, without doing anything because it's got the solar panels up top, et cetera, to do trickle charging. Doesn't last forever, but lasts long enough for us to get away, do a couple of things for a couple of hours. And he's basically in his mobile home. He's totally stoked. He's loving life. But if you can't do that and you got to fly and you got a few extra bucks to take care of your best friend, then check out Retrieve Air. It's a pretty cool concept. And I hope they make it. I hope they do well. You never can tell completely, but let's hope that's the case, because I think it would be really awesome if they do and if they can expand service. Now, keep in mind, these guys do not own the actual aircraft. Aircraft is owned by various charter companies that they work with, but it's specifically designed for you to bring your pet on board and be able to go to the cities that they're connected up with. And I'm happy to see that Fort Lauderdale and Denver are connected up. Fort Lauderdale and New York are connected up, and a bunch of other spots, LA. But again, the travel dates are very, very limited depending on the time of the year. You could only have one outbound flight from Fort Lauderdale to Denver, let's say, in the month of February, in the month of March, if I chose to take my dog to Denver, for instance, and visit my kids in Boulder. That's the drawback. The other drawback is some people will think it's pretty expensive. One way is going to run you about $1,700, but what's the value of your pet's life? To me, priceless. So I'm very happy to share that I like these guys. I like what they're doing, and I want them to be successful. Now, with that said, there are a few other things that we could cover. And one of the things that's been a real issue with airline travel are people that have that issue with reclining seats. Now, are you a seat recliner, or are you the guy that sits there, never reclines your seat, it's always upright, and you get aggravated when the person in front of you does that? Well, if you're the guy that gets aggravated, then you need to upgrade, bro. You need to upgrade your seat and be in a space where you either have like a premium economy or you're in business class or first class, where that's not an issue. And if you can't afford to do that, sit down and shut the F up, because if I'm sitting in the seat in front of you, I'm going to be courteous. And I recommend everybody does this. Take a look back and say, hey, just heads up, man, I'm going to put my seat back. Hope you're cool with that. Make sure that laptop's not there. There's not a bunch of food and drinks that are getting knocked over, because that's just rude if you just go back really fast suddenly. So that's just basic etiquette. And that's something that's really, really missing in air travel today. And anybody who thinks that air travel is expensive, go back to like 1975 and look at what the inflation adjusted price of an air ticket should be today. And it would be multiples of what you actually pay. So we've basically taken the Greyhound bus people and we put them on planes. And you see them when you go through security. You see them when you're on the plane. You see them at the gate. And that's not to be a class. That's not like a class issue. It's an etiquette issue. Some people were raised by wolves. I worked with one guy. I think he was raised by wolves. Just saying, won't call names out. But when we would get off a flight, let's say to London, he would leave a pile of garbage in his space. I mean, we're not talking like a little bit. We're talking so much that the flight attendants are like, holy Jesus, because he was just a slob, just the bottom line. But what I find kind of funny are the people that get upset when you recline your seat. And I understand if you go back and you smash into the laptop or whatever. But if you don't do that, then too bad. And it spawned something called the Knee Defender, which was a hot story about 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was. It was a while ago. And people were buying these things, and you could shove them into the opening where the seat, the hinge where the seat goes back, and it would prevent the guy in front of you from reclining his seat. So I thought that was kind of funny. And I talked about that numerous times on different networks, because there were literally fights breaking out because of the person jamming up your seat and you can't get in fights on planes, folks. You just end up in jail and on the no-fly list. So it was not a really good thing for folks, but it became a pretty hot topic. But now we have the footrest lady. I don't know if you've seen this, but the footrest lady who thinks the back of your seat at the very top is her new ottoman. And so let me show you what that looks like, because to say it's ridiculous would be an understatement, but this is what we're dealing with in the air these days. And let's see her. Yes. There she goes. All right, let's see her. Take a look at that picture, folks. You see that picture? That's this person. All right. She's, according to the article, she stages a temper tantrum by using the neighbor's seat as a footrest. And yes, I agree. Some people are going mad. And check this out. She put her feet up on the person's headrest. To say that is rude is an understatement. And people got really aggravated with this. And I can't say I blame the person that's in front, because that shouldn't be happening. And obviously the flight attendants needed to step in and take care of that. But that's what we're dealing with in the air. So yes, it is a means to an end. It is what it is. And I do hate that saying, by the way, but I always say it. So I guess I'm addicted to it. I can't help myself. But anyway, it is what it is. Now, next up, I'm going to weigh in on some recent Southwest news. So you may have heard that Southwest, effective a day or so ago, right around today, has dropped the open seating. Remember, if you'd want to get online, you'd want to check in really fast, because the sooner you checked in, you were in seating group, whatever the numbers, 1 through 30, 31 through 60, whatever the breakdown is. I don't fly Southwest that much, and I never liked that. I always liked an assigned seat. So now they're going with assigned seating, and they're dropping, which is what I want you to weigh in on, they're dropping the extra seat policy for what they call oversized travelers. And what that extra seat policy was is, if you got on the plane and it wasn't a full plane, meaning not every seat was taken, they would accommodate an oversized person who couldn't fit in a standard seat. And that was a nice thing for Southwest to do, but you run into a problem, because in many cases, your flights are going out sold out. And now you got the Jumbotron trying to get on the plane, and the person cannot physically fit in the seat. So they're imposing their body on the person next to them, and it's not comfortable for that person. It's not fair for that person that paid for that seat. Now, I'm not fat shaming people, but let's face it, there's a number out there with Americans specifically that puts Americans at overweight or obese, who are overweight or obese, at, I think it's like 70% of the population. So the odds are you're going to get somebody that's quite large potentially sitting next to you. And Southwest recognizes that's not fair, recognizes that if the plane is full, they can't accommodate that extra seat. So that person's going to have to get rebooked on a later flight in that situation. And they're saying that, listen, if you can't fit in a standard airline seat, and again, folks, I know they're not big. I know they're tight. I'm 6'2". My knees on a lot of planes are right in the seat in front of me. And if that person reclines, back to the reclining issue, I then have to stretch my legs out under their seat and recline my seat, even if I don't feel like reclining. I just have to do it in order to maintain the distance and not have my knees going through my, through my hips, because you just get jammed back. So for the folks that are flying Southwest or any airline, because now other airlines, just so you're aware, typically require you to buy an extra seat if you're not going to fit in the seat that you booked. So you're going to need to book two tickets, or just upgrade to business class or first class and bite the bullet if you're an oversized traveler. But here are the rules. If you can't buckle your seatbelt, even with an extender, those extenders that they give you, that depending on the airline, it could be as little as 36 inches for a standard belt, as as big as around 40 or 41 inches. They vary by airline, so check your airline. The extender adds about 25 inches on top of that. And if you still can't fit with the extender because your belly's sticking straight out, then you're going to need an extra seat. And you may not impinge on the guy next to you, but they're going to tell you, if I can't do that, then you're going to have 2 seats. Secondly, the armrests. If your sides are flowing over into your neighbor, and that means you can't put that armrest down while seated. Okay, this is the thing. Not squeezing like this with them already down. No, keep it down. You got to be able to put that armrest up and down while you're seated. If you can't do that, then guess what? You're going to be buying an extra seat, folks. And that gets into the encroaching on, the people next to you. Or if you have medical equipment or some type of large instruments that need extra space, you need to pay for that seat. So that's what's going on. That's what the deal is these days. And maybe Ozempic, I don't know. I know that if I don't exercise daily based on how much I freaking eat, I gain a lot of weight. I will gain weight. I know I'm an ectomorph, meaning I'm tall and skinny, and I'm blessed that way. Thank God, knock on wood. But at the same time, I remember in college, I played basketball and I got injured. And within 60 days of being injured in college, I gained 25 pounds from my playing weight in 60 days. And that was the heaviest I ever was. And then I got into working out, and then I started my company, and I got away from it because of all the travel and everything else. And I saw a picture of myself and I was like, oh, God, man, I don't look good. I don't look healthy. And that committed me to working out and, making better food choices, et cetera. So those are your options. Or buy the extra seat, because nobody thinks it's fair that you are imposing on them because you're overweight. And that's not their responsibility. That's yours. And the airlines have set that straight. And the last one to kind of come along with that is now Southwest. So no free extra seat. If you get there and you need it, you got to pay for it. And they'll match the price that you paid on your original ticket. If there's an open seat at that moment and you need to, and they have to book you that extra seat, but you're going to pay for it. So you got to be prepared for that. Now, there are things that in flying that will drive people crazy. And some people are just crazy. Some people are just not very nice. But at the same time, my biggest flying pet peeve is when somebody comes on, they didn't get their family or their partner to sit with them when they booked the ticket. May not have been available, or it may have cost an extra $39 or $49 or $79 or whatever it was for that, seat selection. Maybe they're flying on the cheapest fare. Because as you know, the airlines have broken up pricing in order to maximize profitability and in order to advertise the lowest possible fare. And that's why when you go on a site like Google Flights or any other site, even an airline site, you'll have to look and say, okay, well, am I planning on, flying to, LA? And I do a search and I see, whoa, man, it's like $99 round trip to fly to LA. But then I realized it's going to take me 32 hours with 3 connections to get there. So you got to get your parameters right. You got to say, oh, well, I want to go nonstop and I want to use one of these 3 airlines, let's say, or whatever it happens to be, whatever your parameters are. And then you go to book your flight. You find out that if you want to select your tickets, you can't do economy. You got to do what they call economy plus, or, or their premium seating, or whatever it happens to be, where you get assigned a seat at the time you book, and then you can pick the seats. But if you don't do that and you get on the flight and then you come up to me and you go, hey, would you mind switching to this middle seat so me and my husband can sit together? My answer is, heck no, I'm not doing that. But I say it very nicely. I'd say, I'm sorry, but I really like the aisle because I'm an aisle guy. I'm not a window guy, claustrophobic, don't like it. So don't ask me to shift. Now, have I done that for folks? Yes. So in other words, if I'm sitting in 2B and there's somebody in 3D, would I switch with them? Yeah, they're both aisle seats. I'm okay with that. I'd switch. I'd get another aisle seat. I'm on the other aisle, one row back. No big deal. Same exact seat. No problem. But a lot of times it's, oh, would you switch with this crappy seat? Or could you move 12 rows back in coach in order to accommodate the fact that we weren't willing to pay the extra $39, even though I was, to get the seat that I was assigned? Sorry. Most of the time that's going to be a no, unless it's in the vicinity and it's, not a big disruption to me and my travels. But what you see are people getting indignant when they ask somebody and that person says, oh, sorry, no, I'm really happy with my seat. They get pissy. They say things. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe you won't do that. You're so rude. Yeah, we know who they voted for. Anyway, very entitled people. And I don't like that. You can ask and I can say no. You can ask somebody else. They can say no and then go sit down. And to be frank, maybe the husband doesn't want to sit with you anyway. Maybe that's why you booked it that way if he's the one who did the booking. I don't want to get involved in your personal marital difficulties. Not at all. But I'm willing to work with you if it is very similar and nearby where I'm actually designed to sit. Now, sometimes people order special meals and other things, and it gets very confusing for the flight attendants. And yeah, they prefer you not do that. But again, you can be nice. But when you simply very nicely say, nah, really, I'm very comfortable in the seat, and I did pay for this specific seat, so I'd rather not move. They should say, hey, I understand, and go on their way. Unfortunately, 50% of the time that doesn't happen. And you've heard this, you've probably experienced this if you're a regular flyer. And I would just tell those folks, it's not my job to make sure you booked it the way you wanted to book it. You did what you did, and it's time to move on. The other thing, there's another pet peeve. It's not as big as that one, but it is annoying. And it's the lengthy boarding process that takes place at airports. And I remember 20 something years ago, maybe have been, I think it was in the 1990s. I'd fly down to Florida for meetings, fly out of LaGuardia, usually on Delta, and into Fort Lauderdale. And I was amazed because I'd get to the airport and I'd be getting ready to pre-board because, I'm a top frequent traveler. I'm able to get on early, get my bag up, et cetera. One of the perks that you get as a frequent traveler, early boarding, et cetera. The problem you have with early boarding are the wheelchairs. And they're also known, that New York to Fort Lauderdale flight attendant called them the miracle flights. It's a miracle because 40 chairs will show up in a line. And I'm not exaggerating. As many as 40 chairs for flights that I was taking out of LaGuardia, meaning wheelchairs, roll up and they're all stacked up. And I'm sitting there looking, going, would they just empty out a nursing home? What the hell's going on? This is ludicrous, but that's what you have. And then, as if it was like a miracle, maybe it's like the pressurized air, the oxygen flowing through the vents. I don't know what it is, but then you get to Fort Lauderdale and there's 5 chairs. And the people that needed to get wheeled down, put on the plane, which delays the takeoff, it takes forever. Yeah, those people, they're suddenly able to get up, depart the plane, no problem. They're doing great. I'm like, thank God, Grandma Mary's doing so well. Look at her. Oh my God. She couldn't walk and now she can get up and carry her bags. And holy cow, it's a miracle. Yeah, not a miracle, just clowns that are gaming the system. And I remember going to Jamaica with my company. I'd bring 60 employees there. And we'd go to different resorts, and we would hold a 5-night, 6-day getaway meeting / fun bonding thing. We'd play some team games and everything. And we got to the airport in Montego Bay, and I see one of the girls that worked for me with one of the guys that worked for me, and the guy was pushing her in a wheelchair towards the lengthy security process. And they thought they were being really funny and cool, and we're going to game the system. And I gave them a chewing out, because I was like, listen, man, we're all here together. That's bull. That's for people that actually need it. So I don't want to see that again. Needless to say, that girl was not with us for much longer after that particular episode. But yeah, I don't want people like that around me or my company. That's just me. And some people think that that's, oh, you shouldn't do that. Look, they were just doing whatever they were doing. Nah, that's just rude. It's like taking a handicap parking spot. That's a big no-no. And my wife has MS, and you wouldn't know it looking at her, but she has times where she has some things going on. She's technically disabled, but have we ever gotten a card to hang in our, window to kind of game the system? Because even though she's very mobile and does well 99% of the time, 90% of the time, pick a number, and she's totally entitled to it, we don't do it, because we'd rather park far out in the lot and do some walking and get a little exercise. What a concept. But this leads me to a comedian that I never heard of, older guy named Brian Holtzman. And he does a clip about airline travel. And I'm just going to tell you, it's a little bit of a viewer warning. There are lots of curses and language that might not be appropriate for kids. So this guy nails exactly what I'm talking about here. And I think you're going to really, really enjoy it. So let me pull him up. And let's hear what this man has to say, because it is comedy gold. All right, coming to you one sec. Just give me a sec. Go.
But I will tell you, there's a lot of retards at the airport. I tell you that. I mean, you're in the airport. Can anybody get on this plane without help? Is there anybody that can get on the fucking plane without help? Families traveling with children that need extra time? Get on the plane, you retarded family of 4. There's no steps on the jetway. Just get on the fucking plane, will ya? There should be a separate airline for retards and handicapped people that can't get on the fucking plane. Retard air. Paint a big wheelchair.
Now, how funny is that guy? Brian Holtzman. I think he says what a lot of us think when it comes to air travel. So I never heard of the guy. And I think that is actually genius, because he's saying what a lot of us are thinking. Maybe we'd use different terminology. Some of those words are taboo today. You know what? Anybody who knows me personally knows that I don't have a filter. I say what I think, and I put it out there, because I'm not going to be, dealing with the word police, where this word was okay 10 years ago, but now you can't say that word. You can't say this. You can't say that. I don't give a crap. I really don't care. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. And it's very liberating to not have to deal with that. But it is kind of funny, because you're thinking, like, you got 2 kids. You got to get on the plane. You need more time to get on the plane because you got 2 kids. What? Is that speeding up the process? Is it that hard to get on a plane with 2 kids? I have 2 kids. It's never that hard. If you're traveling with, kids under the age of whatever, board the plane. If you're this or that, get on the plane, board now. And there's like 10 things now that they go through before they get to their best flyers, which are the people that keep the airlines profitable, which are the business travelers that are getting on planes every week to go somewhere for business. That's the world we live in. That is it. That's where the money is made. And you used to be the first on, Well, after the first class board, if you weren't in first class, you'd be the next up. But you got to wait. Even the first class people have to wait for all that pre-boarding nonsense many times. Depends on the airline. But for the most part, it's all those people that have to get on before you for whatever ailment that they have, or as he said, they're just retarded. And you know what? I say that word and I have no regrets. And just as a little side note for those who get triggered by words, which is kind of funny, just something to note that in New York State, the Association of the Mentally Retarded was the name until 2013, and the national name wasn't changed until 2007. For many of us, that wasn't that long ago. And if you lived in New York, it was 13 years ago when they decided, oh, we got to change the name. I don't even know what they changed it to, but you know, it's a word. Just because somebody uses it as a pejorative doesn't mean that the word doesn't mean what the word means. But everyone's gotten so sensitive in the last 15 or 20 years with all the woke nonsense that everyone's got to like address you with your pronouns. Yeah, no thanks. In fact, here's a tip. Do you still have pronouns in your bio on LinkedIn? You should get rid of them, just as an FYI. Just get rid of them. Because people like me would never hire somebody with pronouns, you know, like you're a woman, you're a she. You're a man, and I'm talking XXXY chromosomes. If you're a man, born a man, you're a he. If you're born a woman, you're a she. Really not that hard, not that challenging. When you're like, I'm a they, them. What? Yeah, okay. I don't care, folks. I literally don't care. But here's something I do care about. And I'm going to address a note that I received last week from a travel advisor. But I want to give it some context because I'll say this. I'm very much pro travel advisor, travel agent. They really shouldn't have changed the names to advisor. It's really you're a travel agent. And that's what people search when they're looking for someone to help them book with travel at a ratio of 5-to-1 over the words travel advisor. But the industry wants to feel good about itself, so they call themselves travel advisor. All right. But the search, when I say the 5X versus the 1X, searches that are done for travel agents exceed travel advisor by a ratio not less than 5-to-1. So if you're trying to keep it to that idea of I want to feel good, then you may end up just hurting yourself because of the fact that you don't show up in search results as much. But back to this guy. I said, you know, I've said this before. I said on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, I said, listen, everyone doesn't need to book every single trip with a travel advisor. And there are many ways to book travel. You know, a travel advisor is one booking channel. A supplier is a booking channel. An online travel agency like Expedia is another channel, and so on and so forth. And it's really up to the industry to demonstrate the value they bring. And anybody who knows me, of course, they know that I do my best to share that insight on national TV interviews on a regular basis. So for a perspective, in some of my most active years doing national guest appearances on virtually every network you can name. The only network I've never been on that's a mainstream cable news channel or, you know, ABC, NBC, CBS, really the only one I've never done is CNBC. That's the only one I can recall that I've never done. I've also done a lot of the affiliates for ABC. I've never done, actually I did do ABC's. I was on ABC's worldwide, whatever, their 6 o'clock news. I was on that. But anyway, with that said, my reach in a single year, multiple times exceeded 100 million consumers. 100 million. That's how many times I went on and did interviews. Some weeks, my busiest weeks were when there's a lot of stuff going on in the world of travel. I've been known to be on 6 or 7 times in a week because I'm doing interviews with different networks and I'm running around doing that while I was running my company. And it was taking me away from my business, but I felt that that was a really important thing. If I could get on TV, and even though the topic was, I don't think the topic was ever, hey, Mark, can you talk about the value of travel agents? I would always be able to work that in based on whatever the overall topic or topics were. Couldn't do it every time, but I did it hundreds of times on national TV. Now, despite selling my company in 2019 and retiring for that period for over 5 years, I continued to have a TV presence where I was continuing to talk about the value of travel agents and why you should book with travel agents, et cetera. And this is despite never getting paid a dime to do these interviews. And I don't think a lot of people realize that 99% of the guests you have on a TV segment are not getting any type of compensation. They're doing it for other reasons. Like I said, in my case, I owned a B2B travel media company, and my audience is travel advisors and agents. So I wanted to share my insights as to why Americans and people outside the US, because I did international as well numerous times, should use a travel agent. And I was doing it on my own dime. Sometimes I had to fly or drive somewhere, kill a whole day to do a 3 to 5 minute hit. But it was worth it because of the impact it could have on those folks. And not getting paid is a choice you make, because if you wanted to get tied into a specific network and get paid for it, then you're only responding to their inquiries about you coming on to talk about a topic. Whereas I was like a free agent, I could go anywhere. The downside was I didn't get paid, but my company was making millions of dollars a year in profit. So therefore, getting paid $60,000 or $100,000 to be a correspondent for a specific network didn't make any sense to me. So I did all that. But let me take you back to the travel agent's message, because what happened was this individual agent who'd been in the industry for, 20 plus years, at least, maybe even longer, I'm just guessing, sent me a note, and it was in regards to about a 1-minute clip that was pulled from a 50-minute podcast where I stated that travel agents provide a lot of value, when you're booking, higher end products, luxury, et cetera, 4-star and above it, let's call it. And that's true, because there's not any value add that the agent has access to outside of personalized service and taking care of things. And if things go awry, all of those factors, but they're not getting you, book 5 nights, get 2 free nights. They're not getting free breakfast at a hotel every day for you, on top of the room, in addition to like maybe an extra room night. If you book 2, you get 3, all of those factors. They typically are in that much higher end product. And that's where the goodies come in. That's where the extra benefits come in. So I said that. And this was the message I got. Came through on Facebook, and it said, Mark, not the best message to say if it isn't luxury, they can do on their own. Billions are spent through travel agents in contemporary and mid-range price bookings. It's bread and butter business and very important. All trips have value to the traveler and need input and attention. Well, I'll say Joe. I won't use his real name. Not necessarily, my friend. Not necessarily. If you're going back and forth to Fort Lauderdale and LaGuardia, and you know exactly the flights you take, and you're doing regular round trips, and you're staying in the same hotel or same area every time, if there's no value add, and I can book it in a minute myself, I still have to deal with that the flight gets canceled, blah, 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 whatever. But that person, if they're flying frequently, they have a high level of customer service from that airline they're flying frequently, because they are a frequent traveler that contributes tens of thousands of dollars to that company a year. And they're not going in and sitting on hold for 3 hours trying to talk to a human being. They're getting right through, because that's how it's set up. For all the folks that fly once or twice a year, you don't have that access. That's why travel agents make a lot of sense. So it just depends. It's not it's not everything's got to be booked through a travel agent, or, these things don't need, it's up to the individual. And it basically means that you have to provide value and prove your value. And I'm going to get into that in just a second. But to be fair to this gentleman, I went back and I said, I don't know if you even know who I am or what I do, but I don't ever recall you sending me a message thanking me for the hundreds of times I've gone on national TV and touted the value of travel agents, why you should book with a travel agent. But to be fair, he basically didn't know who I was, which I find bizarre. He didn't know the support I gave travel agents for decades. I've been very visible. A lot of people know me, but obviously this guy didn't. Again, I'm not going to hold it against him. I don't know how that's even possible if you're in the travel industry, but I could understand if somebody came in the last 5 years and they didn't know who I was, because I was basically sitting on the sidelines retired with a non-compete. Now I'm back with TravelTube trying to, again, use my own money, my own time to tout the value of travel agents. So I'm just like, yeah, God help me, right? But here's the deal. He at least, when I said, hey, by the way, here's a 3-minute clip that was put together back in 2019, where it was like a montage of, hey, what's my best travel tip? Use a travel advisor. What should people think about when they're booking travel? Use a human being. It's your best travel app. It's called a travel agent. Whatever. It was like one after the other, after the other, after the other. And it just gets boring after a while because it's just Mark Murphy talking travel agents. So I sent that to him, let him know. He thanked me for the PR I do. And, that was fine. That was fine. But again, it's like the thing that frustrates me the most with the travel agency channel is when I get something like that. It's very frustrating because I don't need to be doing this TravelTube thing. I don't need to work. I don't need to spend my money on this venture. I haven't even reached out to advertisers yet at this point, because I'm focused on you, the individual travel advisor, and the people that want to learn more and get insights from folks like you. If you go to traveltube.com, you will see all of these videos that we have gone out and found and discovered and then placed on TravelTube. So without that agent even knowing that we're doing it, we're promoting them. We're sending out clips of their stuff in our newsletter. It's going out now to thousands of travel agents and advisors all over the country. And you know what? I'm happy to do that. But I will tell you, there comes a point where I go, you know what? If people are that clueless or ungrateful, what am I doing it for? The good news is there's a lot more of you that appreciate it than him. And I hope that, and I'll keep my eye out. I'll hope he opts into traveltube.com, sees what we're doing, sees how we're featuring travel experts, and then says, yeah, man, I would love to be interviewed. This looks great. And then promotes this. And that's what I ask travel advisors to do. Promote what I'm doing here. Excuse me. Because what I'm doing is trying to help you get the word out. Because one of the greatest business failings in the entire travel industry, and I've been in it since 1991 on the media side, the biggest failing, to be frank, is the industry's inability to clearly demonstrate the value of travel agents. Okay? And anybody that's in the industry, you know what I'm talking about. What are your associations and organizations doing to promote the value of travel agents? And I think it's up to the industry to drive that point home. I think I've done enough to help. And in order to continue to help, I need you guys out here sharing what we're doing, getting more agents coming to the site, getting more agents to listen to the podcast, getting more agents to do things that are going to help them, even if I'm interviewing one of your competitors, because the rising tide lifts all boats, folks. And that's what I'm doing, and why I set up traveltube.com as the travel expert channel, which features you guys. So sign up, follow us on our podcast apps. And once you do that, share, 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 share. And if you do that, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and you're helping yourself and your whole industry. And that's all I got to say. That's all I got to say. I got nothing else to say, folks. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to my frustration here at the end. But hopefully you understand what I'm talking about and where I'm coming from. Till next week, I'll have some good interviews for you coming up next week. I've got a couple of really interesting ones. One in particular is somebody who just got back from Punta Cana, is going to share that experience, some of the new properties there. And then we're going to dive into the luxury segment with a friend of mine who's up in Jupiter. And I think you'll enjoy that as well, because luxury can be defined many different ways. And I look forward to getting her thoughts as well. Till next week, thanks for tuning in.